made by a guy called Sunan Garcia. He's a graduate of the African Odysseys kind of film training program. So he came for our program. He went to make the only film that I'm aware of about Professor Gus John. So that's a big deal. But when it comes to it being shown, we showed it like once last year, and before that, I think it was shown maybe 2 or 3 times since 2015. So you have a lot of really good films out there by black filmmakers, producers, etc. But what they have a problem is getting them shown in a cinema, in a big screen, so people can actually see it and enjoy it. The second film, I've not seen the film before. Professor Gus told me about this film, and it's very pertinent to today's situation, but the same thing applies in that you have a lot of really good, powerful black films being made, but there's a problem having those films shown to people, plus having the chance to sit down and have a Q&A with the people who actually were in the film itself. But what we do at African Odysseys, which has been going for 20 years now, is show these films and have a Q&A. So without further ado, we're a little bit behind time, but we've got some more time now to hear from Professor Gus John. He's going to have a seat here and do what he did before. So over to you, Professor Gus John, and have a seat and off you go.
Hello again, friends. As you would have seen from the credits there, I researched this film in 1984. It was a searing experience for the reasons that I gave earlier on. And many of those scenes in Grenada, Trinidad, and Jamaica were pretty familiar to me. I think you would agree that the working conditions that were portrayed in that film were in themselves pretty gruesome, even in 1984. Not much has changed since, by the way. And when you consider that in 1972, Britain, which had left those islands in the Caribbean in that state of economic precarity and underdevelopment, just dug up and joined the European Union, the European Economic Community, the common market, without a thought as to the historical responsibility for those people, you begin to understand why I am so utterly hacked off with all of this damned rubbish about Windrush. Because what the Windrush narrative doesn't tell us is that those were the conditions from which people came to this country. And they came for an opportunity to survive. Never mind all this jingoistic nonsense about coming to help Britain rebuild itself. We owed Britain nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Save love.
And we certainly didn't owe it our labor, our patriotism, or anything else to come and rebuild itself after 2 devastating world wars within 30 years. So we have to keep these images in our minds as we consider what is happening in the Caribbean region today. Because in the same way that you had Eugenia Charles in Dominica, Tom Adams in Barbados, that suave individual, I was going to say something else. It might be a bit rude. Edward Siaga, a nasty piece of work. In the same way that you had them playing that role with Reagan in 1984, 1983, you now have people like the drunkard, what's her name? Kamla in Trinidad. Yes, and she is a drunkard. playing the same games with Donald Trump. So although that man, against any kind of law, maritime law, international law, whatever, determines to kill people in boats in the sea, killing them from the air. Over 67 people have been killed by him in those ways. Her only response was, let him kill them all. They all deserve to die. She never asked for evidence that the people whom he were killing were people whom he called narco-terrorists, and even if they were, the law says you apprehend them, and surely the Pentagon and all its armed forces have the capacity to apprehend them on the high seas, bring them to justice, and ensure that you have the evidence to convict them. And even after you've convicted them, there is no way that you would put them to death. He's killing them from the air, and that despicable woman is saying, kill them all. And as I said in an article I wrote soon afterwards, what that means is, if she is endorsing extrajudicial killings by Trump and his troops of innocent people on the high seas, including Trinidad citizens, then basically what she's saying to her own police and army, etc., is that you too could engage in extrajudicial killings, and I, as Prime Minister, won't bat an eyelid. So if you suspect that there is a drug dealer or trader in East Dry River, Belmont or wherever, you can go with your squads. The minute you see them, you shoot them, and when they're dead, they can't answer your questions. So we have to consider the elements of all of that. As Tim Hector was saying, the other governments in the Caribbean took fright. The Grenada people embraced Maurice Bishop and the revolution. It was their revolution. Others, suffering under the same conditions in St. Vincent, in Barbados, in Guyana, in Jamaica, they took heart from what was going on in Grenada. Maurice Bishop was beloved of all of them, and they saw the possibilities. They saw the improvements that were happening, and for the first time there was evidence of actual popular participation in building democracy. So yes, as Tim was saying, the revolution made all kinds of mistakes, imprisoning people with no good reason, and without any idea as to when they were going to be released, and all of that stuff. But nevertheless, it offered hope to people to get out of those conditions that we saw. It provided when I went to school, when I joined the secondary school, Presentation College in 1958, having won a scholarship, or else my parents wouldn't have been able to send me to that place. There were only 4 decent secondary schools in the country. 2 boys' schools and 2 girls' schools. 1 boys' school and 1 girls' school were run by Roman Catholic nuns and brothers with a very colonial mindset. And the other 2 were government, non-denominational schools. The revolution introduced secondary schooling for the whole population, free of cost. The literacy rate then, it just grew astronomically. Now it's back down again. So now I'm engaged in trying to assist that government in improving the quality of teaching and the quality of schooling outcomes for children. So although the film was made 1984, we're now in 2026. Donald Trump was trying to get the Grenada government to agree that he should have a radar system on the island to deal with Venezuela and Colombia and all sorts of people in Central and Latin America. And thankfully, the Grenada government refused. As a result of that, he's punishing them by requiring anybody needing a visa to go to the United States to produce 15,000 US dollars. That's the kind of imperialism that's being revisited upon people, about which Britain is doing nothing except being complicit. And yet you have these benighted individuals talking nonsense about Windrush and Windrush Line and Windrush Day and all of that. Meanwhile, our children are not being told about those conditions. They're not being told about the reasons why so many of us had to leave those islands to come to this green and not so pleasant land. So, you didn't come to hear a talk. Let me hear your reactions to the film, and I'll try and answer your questions. Yes. I'll come to you after.
Firstly, thank you very much for always speaking truth to power and for all the efforts that you continue that you bring about as a result.
Thank you.
I did some research in Antigua and Barbuda, which looked at amplifying Antigua and Barbuda voices and challenging the historic and contemporary silences there. And one of the things that I found was that people have got very definite ideas about their country, the state of it, what they would like to see change, what isn't going so well there. But for various reasons, self-silence because of fear of either financial or even physical threat and danger that they might face in speaking out. So as you touched on there, when people are seeing around the world, even world leaders, not necessarily speaking out against what we can see is clearly wrong, what would you say to those people who feel that they don't have a voice or can't voice what their real feelings are in their country to bring about change?
Yes. Well, I mean, I think it's pretty clear that progressive voices are always being silenced. And that's on a spectrum from the intolerable to the catastrophic. Some people get killed, as we well know, in Gaza right now. The latest count is 262 journalists, including the latest one from Al Jazeera, who was killed in the last 24 hours. 262 journalists have been murdered by the IDF since October 2023. Targeted murders, all right? So you're absolutely right. The thing is this, that the populations of those countries are being manipulated in the same way that the population of this country is. We, as black people, particularly given our history, had a right to expect the white working class in this society, given their history, to make common cause with us. But they've been so manipulated by the racism which serves the state well, which is why it is so systemic, that they begin to see us as their problem, as being inimical to their interests. And that is true of a particular class in the Caribbean as well. You know, we may not have a race problem in the Caribbean, except in places like Trinidad and Guyana, where you have this business of Africans and Asians and what have you. But we certainly have a class problem, as we do in Nigeria, or Ghana, or Sierra Leone. So the contradictions are not just on account of race. And people of a particular class want to preserve their interests. It serves them to have people suffering at the bottom without the capacity to have the kind of standards of living, etc., that they deserve. And that class thrives upon it. And then they want their children, whom they send abroad for universities and etc., to continue that same tradition. So it's a question of how, and that's why the Grenada Revolution was so important. Everybody saw that they had a stake in the future. Everybody was given the opportunity to organize themselves and make their needs heard, act in the interest of their community, and expect the people in the People's Revolutionary Government to take all of that seriously. And they did. So rather than having the Westminster-style government, there were parish councils, there were women's councils, there were systems of adult education and community education where each one taught one, where older people were not written off as having nothing to contribute, and they themselves were teachers, even if they themselves were functionally illiterate, like my father. So it's a question of how you empower people to A, believe that they have worth and value, that their voices matter, as the film ended, you know, the masses of the world matter. And that they can organize themselves and their interests in a manner that actually enables the totality to come together and work in the interests of the entire nation, rather than for this party or that party or the next one. Because all that does is to ensure that one damn party is as corrupt as the other. And that's what the region has suffered from for God knows how long. I mean, you look at Grenada, 133 square miles, for God's sake. Size of, I don't know, Islington or something. In terms of population, yeah? And each one wants to be a big fish in some imaginable pond. Doesn't make any sense. Which is why it is so important that those countries look at themselves now in relation to their interdependence upon one another, their interdependence upon that large Caribbean diaspora that's dotted around these metropolitan countries, Britain, the US, Canada, France, etc. And understand how we can remake ourselves, first by changing our mindset, emancipating our minds, and having that belief in one another and our capacity to collectivize in order to bring about change. Rather than that, you have this atomizing going on with the Jamaica government making contracts with Israel, for God's sake, to provide them with cyber security. And I'm just about to write to Wholeness and say, what the hell are you going to do about the fact that the Knesset recently has determined that so-called Palestinian terrorists would be put to death? What are you going to do about the fact that there's been that genocide going on there, which is not wanting to repeat in Lebanon? How can you, knowing all of that's been happening, personally invite Netanyahu to send aid and medical supplies and medical personnel to Jamaica to deal with the aftermath of Melissa, when the same damned man and the same IDF are killing medical people who are trying to keep people alive in Gaza? Where is your moral compass? What the hell is that about? And why isn't the whole of the Grenada, of the Jamaican population standing up and say no? So we have major problems with that two-party system and the way in which those governments behave as if they're not run by a ruling class in itself, many of whom are either Israeli Zionists or they're sympathizers. At the back.
I want to thank you for your work. I am new to this whole history. My name is Alicia Jenkins.
I can't hear you too well.
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Alicia Jenkins. I live in Connecticut, in the United States, and I came here to see this. Also came here to see my favorite hip hop artist, but I thank you, Professor Gus, and thank you all for allowing me to be in your presence and to learn
You
your
are most
history.
welcome.
I sat back here and I cried for most of the documentary. It was very heartbreaking to witness. And I think a lot of people in the Caribbean, I'm half Haitian, are afraid to become like Cuba. Right now, Trump is starving 11 million people in Cuba. So the fact that this happened before I was born, the fact that it's much worse now. I visited Cuba twice. I've been to Haiti once.
Yeah.
It's hard to watch. And I just wish more people were here to witness this. So I see y'all as my people, even though I know I'm American. This really touched me in a way that I did not expect. So thank you.
Thank you, Alicia.
Thank you for sharing that. Any more? Yes.
I want to say today, there's a reason for me for being here, to hear this, and also to reunite in myself. The fact is, I may be one voice, but like a drop of rain, if I start talking to somebody else,
Sure.
that person
Sure.
will make the ripple.
Sure.
And it's important for me to get back there, get into those schools like I used to, get in to talk to those youngsters, to make that ripple go bigger and stronger. Because, as you say, if you change the mindset of one person, you never know what that next person will do. So thank you for being here, and thank you for reuniting me to say I have to, not to sit back on my laurels, get there and do what I used to do, and do it more. It's
Thank
so
you.
important nowadays, and I think everyone here, I can feel, they're the people, you think you come here, you are that small part of that river.
Mm.
You are that person
Sure,
who go
sure.
back and talk to somebody else and make the difference.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Professor Gus, again, thank you too. I think there's a lot that's been shared that makes us.
You have to be louder.
Yeah, there's a lot that's been shared that makes us sad, but so I don't want to go away from here just being sad. But there's something too about as a fellow elder, is that even at this stage of our lives, we have dreams. What's your dream? What's your dream? What's your dream for us?
To retire and drink some Guinness.
And after you've done that, what else?
My dream really, I was very depressed yesterday. Well, early hours of this morning. I witnessed a splashdown of these 4 people coming from outer space and all the rest of it. And then this morning, I was up too early, given how late I went to bed last night. But never mind. I was depressed by the commentary I was hearing this morning. Because people were talking about what this successful mission heralds for the future. And the language was so depressing. It was about the US stealing a march on China and on India and what have you. And these God-forsaken people who've messed up planet Earth now want to go and do the same with the Blue Reapers, for God's sake. I mean, it's unbelievable. The only thing people could talk about is ownership and making claim to territory and so on. I mean, they made such a mess of planet Earth, which many of them are refusing to understand. Now they're talking about how they could ensure that in space, they are the ones to colonize this bit, keep people off that bit, and so on. It is lunacy, total lunacy. So, you know, if I were not hopeful, right, I would have popped my clogs by now. Never mind hanging up my boots. I live with hope, with deep self-belief, and with the belief that through collective action, we could all bring about change. My dream is that my 12 grandchildren, and those whom they would have in their own right, can live in this society or any other part of the world they choose without having to struggle with the toxicity of racism. Right? The dream that people could understand, you know, that the earth is not theirs. And the source, the divine source, has equipped this earth, this planet Earth, with enough resources to keep everybody living humanly decent, dignified, comfortable lives. The amount of wealth that is running around, well, not running around, stored by certain people, a small section of humanity on this planet, is unbelievable. There need be no poverty, no homelessness, no street sleeping, none of that stuff. And for me, it's a matter of ensuring that while there is breath in me, I continue not only to hope, but to work in a manner that actually gives some encouragement to others around me to have the belief that they could bring about change. It's a perennial struggle. And it is one that we join at different points in our existence. And it's a question of really making sure that we are on the right side of history. What do I mean by that? The last thing I wrote for the Gleaner, I think it was, I started off by saying this: if you do not elect to be part of the solution, you are implicitly agreeing to be part of the problem. Now, it might not sound particularly profound, but think about it. And sometimes being part of the solution requires you to kick some ass, including within your own family. Because backwardness doesn't backwardness and reactionary stuff doesn't respect blood. So we need to be clear about our own vision, our own sense of why we're on this earth plane, what our journey is about. And then show, first of all, that we take responsibility for self-protection from all of that gunge. And secondly, responsibility for making sure that we're not heaping that gunge upon other people ourselves. So, and of course, drinking some Guinness. Any more?
Yeah.
Let's take you first.
I'd love your opinion, please, on Ibrahim Traoré, who's the leader of Burkina Faso, and also Mia Motley. So they've allowed Ibrahim, it seems, to reign supreme at the moment. Do you think that that's going to last?
It seems to me that whether you talk about those two people or people who went before them, Frantz Fanon, Nelson Mandela, whether it be out of sheer relief that there's progressiveness or whatever, or not, we do have a tendency to canonize people, yeah? And to expect them to be superhuman. I think that's a mistake. We have to welcome Ibrahim Traoré and what he stands for and what he has done and continues to do. He has his antecedents. There was Patrice Lumumba.
And look what happened to him.
There was Thomas Sankara. There was Kwame Nkrumah. There was Amilcar Cabral. And however flawed those individuals may have been, and they were human and flawed, the fact of the matter is that they were imbued with a vision of liberation for their people and for the people of the world. They organized themselves and the country, the territory over which they had some jurisdiction, in order to make sure that they were dismantling those systems of oppression, whether it be colonialism or imperialism or neo-colonialism particularly or whatever. Some of their own people betrayed them to those who wanted to continue to exploit them. Emmanuel Macron does not like Ibrahim Traoré. The French government doesn't like the idea that they were kicked out of the Sahel states. And it is utterly extraordinary that at precisely the same time that the Ghanaian government does something quite historical and takes that resolution to the United Nations so that it can declare that enslavement was one of the worst crimes against humanity. At the same time, on the same day, in Ghana, they were signing this treaty with the European Union to provide security in West Africa. And allowing the European Union to establish bases, have drones all over the place, and so on and so forth. To have a foothold to ensure that what Traoré and that lot are about doesn't spread across the place. That's why they're there. And the correlation between that contemporaneously and what we've been seeing in relation to Grenada on the screen is obvious.
Yeah.
Because, okay, Traoré in his time now is like the Maurice Bishop of Grenada and in terms of the Caribbean region. So we have to be alert to what these European and other imperialists and colonialists are doing, what the United States is doing, and the way the CIA works in conjunction with all of those people. So, Ibrahim Traoré is to be welcomed, he is to be protected for all of those historical reasons. But the people themselves have got to understand.
Is Russia protecting him?
I don't know about that.
Okay.
Maybe, maybe not, I don't know. My point is this, that the people of Burkina Faso, of Mali, of Benin, themselves have got to understand that they may have a leader of a particular disposition, but it is their own changed mindset and abandoning their colonial mentality and allegiance that is actually going to guarantee their freedom. So it's not simply a question of leaving it to him as a leader to pass laws or put economic structures in place, etc. It's the nation that has got to understand he may be, by some divine source, chosen and appointed to be a leader. Their freedom is their task and responsibility, as we saw with the people of Grenada. Nia Motley, I would say the same thing. She makes these important interventions on the world stage and speaks audaciously, perhaps more than any other of these Caribbean leaders. It doesn't mean that there aren't major contradictions within Barbados itself, which she's got to continue to address. But the Barbadian people, and not just those who vote for her, all the Barbadian people, whatever the political affiliations might be, have got to understand that they, with their sense of purpose and a vision of what kind of liberated future they want, have got to organize themselves and not leave it simply to her to be making announcements or passing laws, etc., because of the particular political and ideological disposition she has. Was there somebody else? Yes, my brother.
Yeah, Gus, thank you once again, and also for raising the issue of what the Ghanaian leadership has done in connection with having the slave trade thing at the UN, and also at the same time the PCUT, having accepting to cite going to this agreement with the European Union on the defense part. Well, I have news for you. The United States have got a base in Ghana at the moment. At the airport, Terminal 1, the president of Ghana can't go there without the permission of the United States military commander there. So Ghana is virtually a vassal of the US at the moment, which is a very, very sad situation. It's been said that the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. And we in the diaspora will have to be very, very vigilant. Fair enough, we take the win of the UN resolution, but we have to be very, very alert to what is happening there. But coming back to the film, it's a very, very powerful film. And what the writer, Tim Hector, forgot to add was that it was Maurice Bishop and the New Dual movement were not only speaking to the Grenadian or the Caribbean people. What the US was more afraid of was the message, the radio broadcast, was veering into the black community in the US. And that is what they were really, really scared of. Because Maurice Bishop and his team were reawakening. We have the Malcolm X's, Martin Luther King's, whose message has died down a bit. And now we have a new kid on the block, which was very, very scary to Reagan and his team. And he often did a very good work, but Tim Hector forgot to add that bit.
Yeah. Any other contributions? Yes.
Yeah, I just want to comment really and to thank you for a very insightful film and a really good day of learning a lot about Grenada and the Caribbean. I want to thank you for calling out Androholness. It deserves to be called out again and again. I don't understand why he would invite Israel into Jamaica, have the contract that he has. Israel has just voted no against recognizing enslavement as the greatest crime against humanity. What kind of leader would be associating himself with a country like that and with that kind of opinion, which obviously care nothing for Palestinians and probably would care even less for people like us. So I don't understand Andrew Holness. He's done a lot of very what I would call, stuff that is hard to understand why he. But I guess he's following in the footsteps of Edward Seaga and people like that. But yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Or what I would say to that is this, that Jamaica might be an island, but it's an island in the world. It's not on another planet. And its leadership, whether it be the Prime Minister or his cabinet or whatever, they've got a responsibility to the population as a whole and to the neighbors.
Yeah.
Because whatever cybersecurity Israel might be doing in relation to them wouldn't simply stop there. There is no reason why, given the fact that they're behaving like criminal Siamese twins, Netanyahu and Trump shouldn't see Israel's cybersecurity as being extended to the whole region. Yeah. So it's not just a question of what Wholeness does with Netanyahu in Jamaica. It is what he's allowing, what he's exposing the whole region to by inviting Israel down there and giving them that contract. Which is why it is particularly important that the whole Caribbean speaks up about that and holds them to account. In the same way that they must do in relation to Kamala Bissessar Prasad. Those people have got to be made accountable. There is a large diaspora from that region in this country, and particularly in the United States. And in those metropolitan countries, we are, most bishops, one Caribbean. Because when Shabana Mahmood or Suella Braverman or any one of those ghastly people decide to have a go at us, they don't say Gus is Grenadian, Emmanuel is from the continent, and therefore we're going to make sure we have particular deals with the Grenada diaspora in New York or wherever, and then others. That's not how it works. So although we were from these various islands, before I came to this country, there were only about 5 Caribbean countries that I had been to by the age of 19. All of those other Caribbean people I met and identified with in Britain. We became one Caribbean in Britain. And although when we first came, we had our various island associations for solidarity in order to give support to those whom we left behind. We took an interest in what was going on in our countries. So I worked with the Grenada Nationals Association in the north, Manchester and Huddersfield and so on, with the Trinidad and Tobago Society down here, with the Jamaica Nationals Association in Manchester and so forth. All of those places are now in eclipse. They've pretty much been withered on the vine, because the children of my parents' generation, and particularly my generation, are no longer interested in coming and meeting and talking about, Grenada as if it was in their consciousness all the time, or Trinidad or whatever. Some of them have never been to those places. So they've got a unity as one collective Caribbean people. They share one another's music, share one another's food. They have a mix of cultures that form into one particular kind of Black British culture with different elements to it. So it is important, therefore, that people understand how critical it is that we make common cause with one another. We work deliberately and hard to get rid of these crazy divisions between continental Africans and we in the diaspora, because it is so critical that we take some responsibility for healing those divisions that colonialism and imperialism sowed amongst us. Sometimes the way I hear Caribbean people speak about continental Africans and vice versa, it makes your blood run. And we don't spend enough time talking about that and dealing with it as an issue. And it has even more relevance now that the African Union is trying to make a reality of its 6th region initiative and making the global African diaspora the sixth region of Africa, following the 2003 resolution in Addis Ababa, that is what they would do. So how do we get from where we are now to a position where the global African diaspora, us lot in the Caribbean, those in the United States, those in France, those in Martinique and Guadeloupe, how do we ensure that collectively we can put in place the systems, the mechanisms, the architecture that would make this sixth region initiative more than just a vision, but a reality? It is critical, and it involves each and every one of us here.
One more question.
Yes.
I just wanted to say a deep gratitude to you for everything that you've shared today, the films, the discussions, the honesty, the frankness, and also for acknowledging what's happening in Gaza. And if we don't recognise and fully understand and embrace that what's happened to those people in Palestine is happening to us globally, that we are them and they are us. They are children, they are mothers, they are fathers. You know, it shouldn't have happened, and it's happened, and it's been happening for too long. And now it's spreading. And if people don't start speaking up about it and doing something, writing to their MPs, collectively going out on the streets, doing what they can, making friends with people in Gaza, connecting in some way, we don't have the right to sit here and watch these films in the luxury of this beautiful space. So I really want to acknowledge you for bringing Gaza into the conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I thank you for that, because it really illustrates what I was saying about electing to be part of the solution and not being complicit in the problem. It's really quite crucial. Thank you all for coming. It's been a warm and wonderful encounter and grounding. So I'm really pleased.
Just to go back to Lucian's point on that, we do this sort of thing every single month all year long. So the flyers outside detail when you have more such events coming up, because we have a whole bunch of events like this coming up. We have a France following weekend. We're going to have Professor Gus John back again. We have a bunch of things like this, and sometimes you have 500 people, sometimes you have 50 people, sometimes you have 15 people, but it's the quality of the audience, the questions, the speaker, the information here, because you got to see these films here today and have this conversation with Professor Gus John here, and the thing is that this was never supposed to happen, because the BFI cut funding for this program last year, right? Even though they had 18,000 people saying we want to have more of this stuff. So we carried it on without any BFI funding, and that's come you're here in this room today to watch these two films and have the Q&A for like, well, this is a double bill for like £12. And a lot of times we just do it for free. So pick up a flyer, tell a friend, and next time bring them in with you. Other than that, thanks for Gus John. Thank you.